this is one of the government projects to scale up or increase school infrastructure in the city and all over the country. So as the people responsible for finance, collecting taxpayers' money, deploying that taxpayers' money to build public infrastructure, so we came to see how the public resources have been deployed to create a school that is going to provide education to our learners. So as we have heard, this school started as a project school. They were interns before. Government then saw to that these interns need to be transformed into proper infrastructure so that our kids will no longer be taught under interns. So now we have impressive infrastructure. We believe the public resources have been put to good use.
Let's celebrate a century of informing, entertaining, and educating in celebration of World Radio Day this February. Radio speaks to us, connects us, and builds global bridges with its powerful impact on news and current affairs, entertainment, sports, and more. This year, we shine a broad floodlight on radio's remarkable past, relevant present, and a promise of the dynamic future.
NBC Radio, it's ours.
The Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises, that is Ipumbu Shiimi, will table the budget for the financial year 2024-2025 in the National Assembly, that is today at 1400 hours or 14:30, that is 2:30 p.m. The national budget contains the government revenue, spending and borrowing plans, as well as key policy priorities. The Finance Minister delivered the 2023-2024 budget speech in Parliament last year under the theme Economic Revival and Caring for the Poor. The 2023-2024 budget comes to a total of 84.6 billion Namibian dollars, which represents an increase of 9.7% from the comparable levels of 2022-2023 financial year. The budget of 2022-2023 was directed towards boosting social safety nets, which include the old age pension fund, as well as orphans and vulnerable or disability grants. Now, the Finance Minister, that is Ipumbu Shiimi, said that the financial year 2023-2024, which was last year, was meant, or the budget was meant to maintain three interlinked fiscal policies actions, namely pro-sustainability, as it reinforces the government policy and spending priorities, as well as the budgetary framework outlined in the financial year 2022-2023 mid-year budget review. Now, the other one is that it is pro-poor, as it provides support to the most vulnerable members of our society through a boost of our social safety nets, cognizant of depreciating real incomes, particularly for the low-income households, exacerbated by high inflation and rising interest rates. Good afternoon, Namibia. I'm Daniel Nadunya, and thank you so much for joining us. But to touch a bit on last year's budget and what we can expect today, I am now joined by an esteemed panel of experts here. That is Ms. Lahia Shapra, the Manager of Taxation Services from Deloitte. And then we are also joined by Mr. Lamek Odada, that is a lecturer of economics, accounting, and finance from the Namibian University of Science and Technology. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Odada, let's rather start with you from an economist point of view. We always hear about budget, how important budget is, but what is a budget from a very simple perspective or from a very lay perspective? What is a budget and what's its importance?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Daniel, and fellow viewers. So when we talk about a budget, this is a financial plan that gives an estimate of the revenue and the expenditure, and it gives us a roadmap of what the government is planning to spend. So it actually shows us what the government has, what the government is planning to spend, and it also lists the priorities. So in this budget, you will therefore have to realize that there will be key priority areas, that is the number one on the list, and then others will follow. So this is very important in that, as we know, that the source of government's income is tax. So the money that has been collected through taxation is therefore then redistributed in different ministries to help those ministries offer goods or offer services to the local community, not necessarily local community, to the Namibian nationals, to the nation at large. So it's very important for us to listen to the budget carefully so that we know what is coming to us. For example, if the Ministry of Health is allocated some money, therefore we know there will be enough medication. When somebody is sick, you don't have to worry because I can go to the hospital without the fear of there will be no medication or I will not get assistance. So in essence, it's a roadmap in financial terms that gives us a plan that the government will be taking on for the next 1 year. That is what the budget is all about.
Basically laying bare what is in the coffer and how it is going to be used.
Correct.
That basically brings me, Ms. Shapra, how is that likely to impact the economy, but how is it likely to impact the end user,
Okay.
a person on the ground?
Okay. So initially, like my colleague said, with the budget, it actually addresses or explain how the government intends to actually spend the resources of the government of Namibia and how it actually intends to address the needs of the Namibian people. But mostly when the government spends more, invests more in the economy, it stimulates economic growth. And we need economic growth in an economy like Namibia. Yeah.
Yes. How does the budget table and the revenue allocated find its way into the very downstream? Maybe Mr. Odada, if you can just assist us.
Yes. So, you know, there is the channel of communication,
Yes.
even in financial terms. So the money
Right.
comes from the treasury that is now resting under the Ministry of Finance and Public Enterprises. And then this Ministry of Finance and Public Enterprises then now divides the money that's available in the coffers to different ministries. We've got, for example, the Ministry of Gender, Ministry of Education, Higher Education, Ministry of Health, so many ministries. So, for example, if I talk about an end user who is a student, let's say at UNAM, NAST, or wherever, how does the student benefit on this? The student, through NASFAF, gets to be funded. So the end user gets fees to be paid, and then the student attends school. Somebody else who is, let's say, in a remote area of Wangwena region or any other region, goes to the nearest clinic. The person can get treated and so on and so forth. The Ministry of Gender, the Ministry of Education. So the Ministry of Gender also through their ministry disburses the safety nets, that is the old age, the disability grants, so that's how they get it. It's very important as taxpayers that we be very keen on what is stable, such that you will be able to say, okay, the money that I give back to the government is properly used, or I'm not happy with the way this is allocated. But that now brings the process that the minister uses, whereby a call was made to everybody. Can you please give your input? What would you want to see in this current year's budget? So we had a chance there. But even though if we missed that chance, we will still have another chance. That is, during the midterm review of the budget, we can go back and now tell the minister, oh, I think we really allocated some money here. Can we think of reallocation a second time? So
Yes.
it's very important that we get engaged in this kind of scenarios and
Yes.
participate.
Yes, Mr. Dada, thank you so much. We just need to cross over to our colleague Seraphia Nadunya, who is going to speak to the minister as he make his way into the chambers. Over to you, Seraphia.
The Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises has just arrived at Parliament to present the national budget. So let's quickly have a quick chat with him before he enters the chamber. Minister Shiimi, I know time is limited and the session is about to start, but can you just give us an overview of what we can expect in today's budget presentation?
Well, thank you very much, NBC. The budget, of course, is full of many things. First of all, we are looking at how do we support the economy. That's one. How do we ensure that we provide resources to the needy sectors, such as education and health, particularly education. That's why you see my guest today, our school learners, because the theme is about supporting the Namibian child. So we're also making provision for us to ramp up our investment in infrastructure. But there are also provisions for taxpayers. We are going to give some relief to the taxpayers so that we can help to cushion them against inflation. As you know, that inflation has been increasing for quite some time. So we need to give taxpayers some relief. So the details, of course, you'll hear when I present the budget statement.
Mm-hmm. But how would you describe the current economic outlook of the country in simple terms?
Well, I believe we have come from a very, very difficult past. Things have started to improve. So the budget was crafted in an environment which was much better than the previous few years. So I'm quite optimistic and positive, but it means we still, all of us, we still have to work harder for us to be able to create the necessary opportunities, especially for job creation.
Mm-hmm. The public has been waiting for this day. What main message do you want them to take from today's budget presentation?
The main message is that, yes, the economy is improving, but it means we all have to bring our part to ensure that the Namibian economy is going to grow even faster so that we can reduce unemployment and poverty.
Mm-hmm. That was the Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises, Ipumbu Shiimi, just giving us an overview of what you can expect in today's budget presentation. Let's join him as he heads to the chamber to unveil or officially unveil the budget.
Welcome back, colleagues. There we have the preliminary. I think the minister actually saying that he's optimistic and perhaps maybe your impression and the fact that he basically showed up with some school learners there. Does that basically mean maybe we are most likely to see most of the chunk of the budget going towards education and so forth? Mr. Odada, let's perhaps start with you.
Yes, thank you very much. You see, just from what the late President Hage Geingob said for this year is the year of expectations. And I think the Minister of Finance is following in that footsteps to telling us that this budget for this year is pro the Namibian child. They are going to support the economy, specifically the needy sectors, and he picked out two sectors, that is education and health. Having seen those school children there, of course, year of expectation, I'm definitely expecting that the education sector, not only the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture, but even the Ministry of Higher Education.
Yes.
On tax, I think that's where Madam Laya will have to tell us.
That's where I wanted to go, basically to say that there is a preliminary, I think, promise for some kind of relief on tax, that is to cushion the users or the consumers, the members of the public, Namibians, from the impact of inflation. What you have to say about that?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, the minister did announce at mid-year last year that they were looking at the reduction of the corporate income tax from 32 to 31 in the 2024-2025 financial year, and then the following year to 30%. At the same time, the minister also announced that they were looking at the change in the individual income tax for the individuals. This is the common people, you and me, working in the streets, in terms of reducing this threshold from 50,000 to 100,000 per year. And just a note, this has not been changed since 2013. That is more than like 11 years ago. So a cushion or a reduction in this threshold will provide actually tax savings, which will provide the individuals with more money to spend and actually stimulate economic growth to a certain extent.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I also wanted us to not forget that this year especially is a very important year in our calendar, in that we have the national elections taking place in November. Perhaps what are some of the expectations apart from the preliminary that we've heard already from the minister, and maybe how significant is this budget considering the national elections that are just upcoming in November?
Yes, you remember that in the previous years we've had a very difficult situation. Remember, we came from COVID and then we tried to have the economic recovery, and now from the minister's words is that the economy is recovering. It's very optimistic, but still says that we still need to do more. What I'm still going to expect is that we're going to see a very big chunk of allocation in terms of what the ministries received last year. So I won't be surprised if I see something going to the Ministry of Gender again to help on the social safety nets. Of course, the Ministry of Defense, we know that is our ministry that gets the most. So, but I expect to see an increase in what they received last year, because this would help them now provide more services to the people and to rally the votes.
Yeah, at the same time, we also expect perhaps an announcement towards the rehabilitations of stadiums. Soccer stadium sport has been a hot topic in Namibia recently, so that will also be something that will be good and welcome to the Namibian people. And perhaps maybe an initiative to initiatives toward SMEs and just yeah.
Yes, when the minister says they are going to relieve taxpayers a little bit, what do you think would then be maybe short-term and long-term plan to compensate for that cut, for that relief?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Actually, there is a couple of, I would say, suggestions. So, for example, there is a freight tax. So, freight tax is a tax that is collected from non-resident aircrafts or ships that actually brought passengers and goods in Namibia. But since it was, since inception, it was never implemented. So this tax is actually levied at 10%. So I think this is the perfect time to actually collect on it and implement on it. And we do understand that NAMRA and the Ministry of Finance, they are currently busy with awareness campaigns with stakeholders. So we expect the minister actually to make some announcements in that regard. Yeah.
What is it that we as a country can do, perhaps government can do, to basically stimulate more economic growth? Of course, the budget is allocated, but on the ground, what is it that can be done? How may this revenue be channeled to farmers, for example, on the ground, to see that the economy is basically boosted and stimulated?
Yes, you see, the bigger problem we have is the high unemployment rate. So even if we want money to circulate, when that money goes out there, if very many people are still not in the employment, they're not getting this money. So in introducing schemes that can help things like the startups, the SMEs, we're putting money into these people. Once this money goes there, we're increasing the tax base. That is, more people are able to pay tax, NAMRA will be able to collect more. The other thing that is that even if this money reaches the end user, much of it still goes in spending on the daily food that we survive on. So what can we do about that? You spoke about the farmers. Can we subsidize production? And I think that could be the best thing. We then need to put more money in agriculture, do the basics of planting the potatoes, the vegetables around our homes. Remember, we've got even the school feeding program, but if the school feeding program still depends on getting food from South Africa, for example, to feed our people, we're still actually sending more money out to South Africa.
Yes.
So the easier route or the shorter way of having to get this work more effectively is, can we support agriculture? When we support agriculture, the money will remain in the economy instead of having to import. So these are some of the low-hanging fruits that we could pick quickly in such a scenario that I think of.
Yes, Ms. Shapwa, your take.
Yeah, well said. But for instance, the minister at media also spoke about that they are looking at introducing a deduction to corporate tax in terms of internship. So this will, we're not very sure how it will work, but we actually expect the minister to table more on, for example, what is the definition of an internship, and what percentages will these corporate entities receive as a deduction. But this will also actually stimulate economic growth and also reduce unemployment rates in Namibia. But at the same time, it will provide more spending power to the Namibian individuals.
Yes,
Yeah.
but spending power, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
When you speak about spending power, what are we saying, and who gets the power to spend? My understanding is that the budget is allocated, revenues are channeled, but then we have procurement, that is where now things get to basically implementation. Is the Procurement Act user-friendly? Does it allow for those who have the ability to basically be able to procure, spend, and earn?
Yes, definitely. That I'll give you two answers to that. I would
Right.
say both yes and no.
Right.
Because you find that, of course, when we want to procure things of high values, then the process becomes rigorous and it takes time. However, we've also seen the disadvantages of some of this Procurement Act, whereby every little thing that is needed urgently still has to take a month or weeks and months in order to be procured. So there should be a way within this Procurement Act that should allow for faster processes. For example, a clinic that is down in a remote area will have to go through the long process of procurement in order for them to get the medicine that is needed urgently. If that takes a month or two, the people down there are dying. The people there are not getting the services. So is there a way in which we could then say some of this which are urgently needed, which are actually not huge sums of money, we could even do direct procurement? So there are both good sides to bad sides of it, but all in all, the Procurement Act really in general is a good thing because it lets us people follow the correct procedure, and there's also what we call accountability. There's a communication channel of who needs to do what at what point, and therefore it then brings the checks and balances whereby it's not myself who is procuring, I list what I want, I'm the one who's going to get it, I'm the one who's going to check it, and I'm the one who's going to approve the payment. So in that way, the Procurement Act is very good in closing such loopholes. But in general, we should have a way of loosening some of the requirements so that we can get some of the things more urgently and more faster to reach the ground.
Yes. Ms. Shapwa, I see you want to have an addition, or you want to disagree?
No, I want to agree with what you said. Well said.
Right. Perhaps still, Ms. Shapwa, I had a conversation with one of my colleagues, and we were debating as to whether it's good when too much money is in circulation, or is it a bad thing? Perhaps maybe let's have regard to this conversation. We do say it's a good thing when money is so much in circulation, or is it when money is very scarce? Ms. Chapa.
Well, in terms of government spending,
Yes.
that's a good thing because it stimulates economic growth. So the more the government spends, the more economic activities are created and opportunities, and it also increases production. So with production and economic activities also increase employment. So it will perhaps also reduce poverty and spending power as well. So I would say it's a good thing when governments spend and invest more into the economy. So yeah.
Yes. Let's throw that same question to you, Mr. Odada.
Of course, there's nothing like too much money in circulation. So I think it's just enough money to circulate. And why am I saying that? Remember, there is nothing, literally nothing that you can get without money. So money is our medium of exchange. And we must also realize that the time value of money speaks to $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. So if we can get the money and we're able to purchase what we need today, it's much more better than waiting for that money to come tomorrow when things are more expensive and stuff like that. So generally, if we have more money in circulation, meaning we are able to cater for our needs now than waiting for it tomorrow when things are more expensive. So government spending will definitely stimulate economic growth because myself, yourself, you will be able to have a little money to buy bread, buy clothes, buy books, and etc. So it's,
Yes.
it's a good thing.
Yes. Perhaps maybe let's go back again to the event of today. It was the late President Hage Geingoob's undertaking that the old age grant will be increased. Are you expecting much to be said today with regard, or are you expecting that promise will be honored in this budget? Let's start with you, Ms. Shapwa.
I'm actually expecting the minister to make a comment regarding it. Perhaps maybe increase it with $100 or maybe, yeah.
$100.
That's my expectation.
Right.
I do not really expect the minister to increase it to $3,000 Namibian because I think that would be a hefty burden to the government coffers. And if you look at the current grant is 1,400. So to double it, actually more than double it at the same time, I don't think it's an easy task to do. So it would be a great thing if it should happen. I mean, cost of living has actually increased, but just the viability of it doing it at once, I'm not so sure it's easy to do.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. In the words of our late president, may his soul rest in peace, we talk about one Namibian house where nobody should be left out. If you go and increase the old age pension safety net
By 50%.
by 50%,
Yes.
and you leave the others not increased by the same amount, then you are actually leaving some people out.
Yes.
So it's a balancing act. Whatever will be announced today is, like I said before, it's the year of expectations. But at least in solidarity with the late president who wished that before he leaves the office, this value reaches 3,000. Even if the minister adds 100 or 200 today, at least he shall have been walking towards the wish of the late president.
Yes.
And we definitely expect something to happen in those lines.
And you said perhaps increasing and leaving others would be problematic. When you say others, what do you have in mind?
Of course, we have other safety nets when we're talking about the disability grant. So those other people receiving those other grants would be like, okay, the old age has been increased by 50%. What about us? Why are we only getting $100 increase if people are getting 50%
Yes,
increase?
yes.
But we do not want to go against the legacy of the late president of no one should be left out. So
Yes.
if you are going to increase something in the safety nets, increase it across the board so that everybody feels that there's something more that they're getting this year. That would be my expectation.
Yes.
However, it's the year of expectations. Whatever the minister is about to table, we will accept and take it. Remember, we've been in a very difficult situation in the past 2 years. The economy is just picking up now, so we should also not be very over-ambitious, but whatever comes today, we should take with humility.
Yes. I mean, we also sought for the views of members of the public in the streets of Windhoek. Let's quickly take a look and have a listen to what they have to say. I think the insert is not ready right there. So let's basically continue with the conversation. You wanted to basically have an addition to what Mr. Odada just mentioned. We have to, of course, honor the wishes of our late president, but we need to be prudent.
Yeah. I mean, it would be wonderful if it could increase to 3,000 Namibian dollars. I mean, if you look at the cost of living right now, how much the bread is, electricity, water, you can just imagine an old person that lives in an urban area. If you have to pay rates and taxes, water and electricity, and still provide in terms of food for yourself with 1,400, it's not really a lot of money. However, implementing it, yeah, we'll wait to the minister to see what he does. I do not want to be in his shoes because I don't think it's an easy task to do. Like
Yes.
my colleague said, there's others to consider as well and other initiatives to consider as well.
Yes.
But honoring the late president's wishes and working proactively towards those wishes is utmost welcome and important.
And maybe in the spirit of trying to help the taxpayers, like the minister is saying, they are going to cushion them by bringing in some tax relief. Maybe some service providers, the likes of City of Windhoek in terms of water, the likes of Nampower, what could they do? Namwater, could they also bring in a relief to help the government? Such kind of thing. So there could be so many ways in which we could meet the government halfway, but all this is in terms of partnerships. So like the minister is saying, from the government's perspective, we bring in the tax relief. Who knows? Nampower says, can we reduce the price of electricity by $1? Namwater does the same. So many things could happen, but again, it's in the spirit of partnership such that every Namibian and the Namibian child gets a relief in this very difficult time.
I mean, that seems to be a very good way of basically explaining how this relief, tax relief, would then be cascaded down to the very grassroots, how basically from a household one gets to benefit from this relief. I mean, if you say corporate companies benefits from this relief, and then they say, look, I think we can also cut a 50 cent from our tariffs. That is basically a good way of putting it, I think, Ms. Shapwa.
Yes, I mean, with the initiative, for example, of reducing corporate tax, that will actually promote investments in Namibia with foreign entities. And if you look at the current economic situations, there's a lot that is happening with the energy sector, renewable energy sector that is coming up. So we actually expect the minister to announce some tax policies in that industry, because at the moment the current corporate tax act does not really address those needs. So we always expect or wish the minister to promote investments in Namibia.
Yes.
And if you go to tax reliefs in terms of individuals, so with the change in the threshold of the individual income tax, that will actually provide more money to the individuals if they as they actually save from the taxes. So if you increase the threshold, that means for example at the moment you pay tax. At the moment you make more than 50,000 per annum. So if it's increased to 100,000 per annum, so it relieves a lot of people, low earners, from paying tax and actually giving them a bit of money in their pocket, increasing their buying power. So that will actually to provide the relief in the current economic state.
Thank you so much. Now, I understand our insert is ready. Let's take a look at what some of our members of the public have to say.
The national budget should focus more on the education, because, for example, most of the kids in the northern part of the country do not have access to classrooms.
I think and I believe that the national budget should focus more on students and learners that had the points to go to varsity, but because of financial problems, they could not do it, or they could not come to varsity, because I can speak for them, because varsities are very expensive, and for NSFAF is taking forever to fund for our studies. So from January until now, we've been waiting for NSFAF, and most of the kids that applied for NSFAF, they are at their houses because they can't afford it. They thought that NSFAF will fund for their studies from the beginning of the year until they finish studying.
I think should focus on the youth. Much more investment they should do it into the youth, that they can become better and productive, opening small businesses and begin to enhance themselves in many ways. Because when the youth are much more engaged into business, they won't be doing any other things. They won't be involved into criminal actions. They will now control their ways because their attention is much more now concentrating on their business. So entrepreneurship, SME, small business for youth, that's much better. And also in funding youth when it comes to education, for them to pursue further tertiary educations, their degrees, their diplomas, much more for the youth. My concern is about the youth, because when you educate the youth, the country will have much brighter future.
It should focus on entertainment and sports. Because to see, okay, let me say this, I myself, I'm a sports person, I'm also into entertainments. But the things that I've learned going through those two sectors is that there's just no support in Namibia. We really need support, and those two sectors, they can bring in a lot in the country. I'm telling you most honestly. And we have talented people when it comes to arts, music, acting, and then sports. We have a lot of players, but I don't know what to say. But our national team is always disappointing us when it's going out. But who doesn't want to win? We both want to win. So I think they must look at it.
We have a lot of kids who are suffering. A lot of them are already done with school. They can't have some jobs and kind of things. So we think we have to look after those kids seriously, because our young kids nowadays, a lot of them are on streets because of lack of jobs and so on. So I think we have to focus on those kids.
So they should focus on creating job opportunity for the youth, and they should focus on creating, let me say, on poverty and eradication. Yeah, so I think that is the best.
According to me, the budget must be focused more to education, because the education is a key to the future. Agriculture because agriculture is that which produces food for the people in the country, and as an artist, also for us artists. Yeah.
Welcome back. Of course, those were the views and expectations from some members of the public as produced by our producer, Leah Thomas. Now, let me just gauge your reaction to what some members of the public had to say there. You've heard their expectations up. What have you picked up?
I picked up something on education again. We've spoken about it, but maybe what we need to add on education, there's a very serious disconnect between what students learn in a classroom and what students are expected to know in the industry. So that brings us to the point of the work integrated learning, or otherwise known as internship. At some point last year, there was that initiative of trying to find a common solution to this internship. So over and above what will be given to NSFAF to fund this student, we really need to look into that. Currently, the people in the industry say, okay, these learners are very good with theory, but practical, they are missing. So we need to link up the two. I also picked up the issue of art and sports. Again, art is something that is neglected in Namibia, and that talks about innovation and talent. Nurturing talent is very important. If you see people who are talented, the likes of the Mbomas of today, the likes of Usain Bolt of today, the likes of Maslingi, these are people that were born, but because they've had somebody nurturing them in the, what is his name? Mr. I can't remember.
Mr. Dada. Thank you so much. I think we will have to cross over now to the chambers where the minister is ready to basically table the budget. Stay tuned, Namibia.
I solemnly affirm that I will be faithful to the Republic of Namibia and its people, and I solemnly promise to uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of the Republic of Namibia to the best of my ability. Welcome back. We'll quickly go through the formalities of the day and revert back to the item for the day, budget time. Any petitions, reports for standing and select committees, other reports and papers, if any, notices of questions. Honorable McHenry Venani.
Indulgence to ask an urgent oral question to the Minister of Mines and Energy.
Minister of Mines and Energy.
Or the Deputy.
Let me get the gist of the question.
Honorable.
Before I divert the question to the Deputy Minister.
Minister, yes. Honorable Speaker, there are reports that we are hearing that our green hydrogen project, the company that was chosen, hyphen PTY Limited or whatever they are, is failing to raise the requisite funds for the project to take off. I want the Minister of Mines and Energy to allay us the fears. Has Hyphen raised the requisite financial resources? Are they struggling, and how much time do they have to raise the requisite resources?
Thank you. Rumors are rumors. Deputy Minister, before we begin to speculate, is there any substance in that rumor?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you for the concern from the Honorable Member, Honorable Venani. Issues that concerns us are always very important to raise. And the grapevine information is always a problem. And for me to give you all the details, I would like to indulge the Honorable Member to just put it in writing. And then I will come back to you with all the details about where we are, what is that we are busy doing currently, and what is the way forward. It's very important. And thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Thank you, thank you. Let's leave it at that. Honorable Kawandenge. Honorable Kawandenge.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I hereby give notice that on Thursday, 7th of March 2024, that I will ask the Minister of Gender, Equality, Poverty, Eradication, and Social Welfare the following questions. Honorable Minister, your ministry is one of those critical ones in the fight against poverty eradication in our country. Namibians were shaken to the core late last year in June 2023 when we received the news that over 16 members of the same family have died. Today, various media outlets are reporting that 2 more kids have died in the same region again, while 8 others are admitted in the Rundu State Hospital because of food poisoning. God forbids that we don't hear that the remaining 8 will die as well. Let us not forget that last year, when I stood in this house and I questioned the level of poverty in the two Kavango regions, some ministers and deputy ministers who are born and bred in those two regions were literally trying to kill me. When I stated, as a matter of fact,
the word, honorable member, the word, order, No, this is not a joke. I think if we put it that way, put it that way, it means that people were actually about to bounce on you physically, but that is not the case.
No, not the case. It's literally speaking, It's literally speaking. Yes.
It's just the wisdom.
When I stated as a matter of fact that poverty is rampant in the two Kavango regions, which to me remains the absolute, unfiltered, impure, and native truth to this day. Honorable Minister, it is worth noting that there are two schools of thought when it comes to the issue of food poisoning. One is that this can occur when someone eats leftover food and fungi where bacteria grows in the food. If leftover food is taken, it causes diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, which lead to dehydration and electrolyte imbalance and can result in death. The other school of thought is that the food or maize meal is expired and not fit for human consumption. However, hunger drove them to eat it anyway because they are starving as a result of germs or other harmful things that are found in those maize meals. My questions, therefore will be, Honorable Minister, what has happened to the laboratory test carried out since last year to determine the cause of death of those 15 family members who died of food poisoning last year? When will this report be made public for us to know what has happened and why these 16 family members died? The deafening silence from your ministry to release that report is sickening. It is an act of concealment, but the immediate family of the deceased, and by extension Namibia at large, needs to know which of the two schools of thoughts is real. It is high time that this report be made public for the sake of the departed souls to eventually rest in peace. In terms of your ministry mandate as a minister, have you undertaken familiarization visit to the two Kavango regions to ascertain what the underlying reasons are of why some residents there eat expired food? Subsequently to the death of the 16 family members last year, what mitigating measures have your ministry put in place to prevent another catastrophic event like that one to happen in the near future? Are you aware of the recent death of the two children in the Kavango East region who equally died of food poisoning? And will you wait until others equally die of the same before intervening? Are you using the money allocated, and we will hear now from the Honorable Minister how much he has allocated to your ministry? Are you using it effectively in as far as addressing the root causes of poverty in the two regions? Food distributed to those most vulnerable people in the regions? What was that question again? Wait. My Lord. Is food distributed to those most vulnerable people in the two regions? If yes, where, and can you provide statistics of how this food is distributed? Will you agree with me that the level of poverty in the two Kavango regions is out of proportions compared to other parts of the country and need drastic intervention from your ministry? Lastly, how do you sleep at night, Honorable Minister, knowing that there are Namibians dying every year because of hunger, while there is no excuse whatsoever in this rich-prone Namibia for such to happen? If only this government priorities was right, coupled with humility and duty of care towards its citizens. You know, even if you are making how many much noise, I will still have my say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Honorable Murora, please. Let's listen to each other. I want to get to the budget.
Honorable Speaker, I do have a very urgent oral question to the Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises.
Can you get the gist of it?
Honorable Speaker, last Friday, I heard some news that I think it's better said in Afrikaans. They say, and it affects Namibia, they say in Afrikaans, there's a man van 12 ambachte en 13 ongelukken. Basically means that your economic decline is much more than your progress for better livelihood. And that is basically on the fact of the grey listing of Namibia. We, this August House, in this case, passed 13, if I'm not mistaken, amendment bills to avoid the grey listing of Namibia last year. Just to learn last Friday that Namibia has actually been grey listed. My big question is, what is it that we, the National Assembly or Parliament, has done wrong or avoided to do that Namibia is today grey listed? And the minister is stating, or said to be stating in the newspapers, that we still have to work on 13 actions, requirement actions from the Financial Action Task Force so that we can meet those requirements. But we are given a year. Now the big question is, Honorable Speaker, we are as Namibia spending, and we have spent a lot of money, I think more than 20 million in Dubai for an investors conference. And this year alone, Namibia is supposed to have an Africa Hydrogen Summit where investors has to come and really find ways and means of how they can invest and develop this hydrogen in Namibia. We have just struck oil, which has to be developed, which is very helpful for us. And all those things has now fallen down the drain. We has to do as a nation so that Namibia has to come back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the issue that I want to put the minister is the grey listing.
Yeah.
Other thing, let's postpone them for now.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. First of all, I also speak Afrikaans, Honorable Murora. So I think the expression is out of context, so it's not appropriate to so I think the expression is out of context. Secondly, I think I'm very happy. Ek Afrikaans is 'n taal gedoen, hoor glad. So Honorable Murora, thank you for asking these questions. These are very substantive questions, and I think I will want to give comprehensive answers to these questions. So my plea to you, can you please put it in writing so that I can provide a comprehensive explanation. Thank you very much. I will appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on. The Honorable Shakupakela
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Members. The first week when we started, I was given a homework by the Deputy Minister of Education, Art and Culture to go and put my question on the paper, what I did today. I gave notice that on Thursday, 7th of March 2024, I shall ask the Minister of Education, Arts and Culture, Honorable Anna Ngipondokwa, the following questions. As we are at the beginning of the year, I want us to look at the challenges that are being experienced by the schools and also by the parents and guardians of the schools going children. Earlier, I raised a concern of lack of textbooks in schools. The schools are expected to implement the new curriculum in the absence of important materials like textbooks. Could this be a contributing factor to higher rate failure in the country? The question to the Minister of Education, Arts and Culture is, what are the plans in place to address this problem that has been persisting over years since the new curriculum was introduced? I so move.
Thank you very much. Short and sweet. Prime Minister.
Speaker, mine is a notice of a motion.
Oh, yes. You are on time.
I give notice, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Members, that tomorrow, the 29th of February, 2024, I shall move that this Assembly approves the appointment by His Excellency the President, the following members of the Boundaries Delimitation and Demarcation Commission in terms of Article 104 sub 1 of the Namibian Constitution, read together with Section 5 of the Regional Councils Act 1992, Act number 22 of 1992 as amended. 1. Justice Retired Petrus Unengu, Chairperson. 2. Ms. Priska Anyolo, Expert in Law and Traditional Affairs Governance. 3. Mr. Gerhard Burirat, Historian and Curator. 4. Mr. Phineas Topnar, Educationist and Pastor. And 5. Professor Fanuel Kapama, Political Scientist and Lecturer. I so move.
Thank you. I'm just smiling when I had Honorable Sepe asking the question. Honorable Ithete. Thank you very much. We move on. Messages from the head of state, ministerial statements, and I now move to the topic that brought us together this afternoon. The first notice of a motion, the one of the Honorable Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises. Does the Honorable Minister move that the bill now introduced?
I so move, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Who seconds the motion? Is there any objection?
You won't have money for this.
It is agreed to. Will the Honorable Minister please table the bill?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Secretary will now read the bill the first time. Does the Honorable Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises move that the bill be now read a second time?
I so move, Honorable Speaker.
Any objection? Who seconds? That's agreed to.
You need the money, sir.
Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, fellow Namibians, I have the distinct honor this afternoon table before the National Assembly the budget proposal for 2024-2025 and the medium-term expenditure framework for 2024-2025 up to 2026-2027 under the theme Continuing the Legacy of His Excellency Dr. Hage Geingob by Caring for the Namibian Child. I repeat, continuing the legacy of His Excellency Dr. Hage G. Geingob by caring for the Namibian child. Before I delve into the details of the budget, Honorable Speaker, I would like to share with you my back-to-school journey. In the early morning of the 23rd of January, 2024, I started with my school tour in the Commerce region. On that day, I left home around about 7 o'clock a.m. to visit the Havana High School, located in the Havana location of Kadutura. Because I was traveling in the opposite direction of the morning traffic flow, it was a blissful drive for me. Traffic was not a problem at all. For those who were driving towards the town center and other places of the eastern side of the city, however, it was a nightmare as I noticed a long queue of cars. In that moment, I couldn't help but to envision how the traffic situation in Windhoek would look like in the next 10 years. In that spur of the moment, I made a mental note that I need to have a discussion over a cup of coffee with Her Worship, the Mayor of Windhoek, in this regard. Soon I arrived at Havana High School, only to see a multitude of young children walking to school. For a brief moment, I thought I was at the wrong place because I expected a secondary school to have all the learners, only to realize later that there are, in fact, two newly constructed schools next to each other. The Havana High School and the Monte Cristo Primary School. At the Havana High School, I was joined by a few of my colleagues from our ministry and a team from the Namibia Revenue Agency, NAMRA. Mr. Mweti, the school principal, a board member, and some staff members gave us a brief history of the school. I could hardly comprehend that a few years ago, the whole place was full of tents. That's where learning was taking place. Soon after, we commenced with the school tour, after I gave a brief address to learners who were gathered in a disciplined fashion at the school amphitheater. At Havana, we could see government resources put to good use. Blocks of classrooms, a computer laboratory, a library, sport facilities, etc. The school was still waiting for some additional equipment and books to be delivered, but overall, the school has made an impressive progress. I was subsequently saddened to know that part of the school roof was damaged by the strong wind last Friday. We still have to understand what happened there. Nonetheless, we decided we cannot end in Havana. Again, in the early morning of the 8th of February, we were at the Augustinium Secondary School. This is another school that benefited from the Education and Training Quality Improvement Project, a collaboration between the government of Namibia and the Africa Development Bank. Augustinium is a special place. That name is interwoven with the history of our departed president. His Excellency Dr. Geingob was a student at the Augustinium College, and so is our speaker. Under the stewardship of Mr. Matengu, the school principal, we toured the newly renovated school hostel, dining room, and the school hall. We saw firsthand what tax money could do if appropriately deployed to care for the Namibian child. Before rushing off to the mixed primary school, we conveyed our sincere condolences to the staff and learners of the Agustinium Secondary School, who all gathered in the newly renovated school hall for the loss of their alumni. Mixed Primary School is a new school at the mixed settlement around the Brakwater area. So far, only few buildings are completed, but construction work was in full swing at the time of our visit. For now, only the little ones in the pre-primary and grade 1 learners are accommodated at that school. Prior to our arrival at the school, Ms. Lopez, the school principal, had already marshaled the little ones in line, singing us a welcoming song. When I greeted them, they replied emphatically, "Good morning, teacher." Who can blame them for thinking that I'm also a teacher? For your full appreciation of the infrastructure development at Havana High School, Agustinium Secondary School, and the Mixed Primary School, let's watch a short video that documented our visit while I'm drinking a bit of water. It's coming. Just listen.
The Ministry of Finance and Public Enterprises' main goal is to develop economic and fiscal policies that effectively manage public finances, fostering socio-economic prosperity for the country's development agenda. Additionally, the ministry is responsible for coordinating the national budget, consumer legislation, and tax policy.
We collect taxpayers' money. That taxpayers' money must help to build public infrastructure, must help to support development in Namibia. And this is an example of how we are helping to support development in Namibia.
Oshinashimoshiwashi chetu shatera chinene onjoho odo machina ndonda twame wando machina ndo dinji ndonda etwando ya eto yungura kukupu no usofe no hakahana no.
We were actually disappointed seeing that the school hostel has leakings and most of the windows and all that are damaged. So after knowing that the government came to our school and indulged in this by helping our school with the renovations, we were actually very happy with that, because now we know that we are secure with a good building that we know that we are safe to stay in.
Our departed president was a learner at the Agustinium College, so he's very much connected to this school. I want to offer you my condolences to you, particularly as the Agustinium School.
So far, the Ministry of Education has constructed 510 classrooms.
When we are talking about 510 classrooms, we mean classrooms in some also complete schools, new schools. And the whole aim of this project really is for us to address the issue of shortage of spaces, especially at our primary level.
Yeah, omunu wana oinjurere punona. Yeah, kucha oetete epangelo letete rango wana walera popepi.
Government has done its part to bring the school closer to the community. Now, government infrastructures are not belonging to government, because in fact government is all of us. So this infrastructure belongs to the community, and therefore is a responsibility first of all of the learners, the kids here. Please look after your schools.
The Ministry of Finance and Public Enterprises remains dedicated to its vision of being a catalyst and adaptive institution that promotes sustainable economic prosperity for all.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. That is just a brief version of our school tour. Honorable Speaker, teachers from Havana Higher School, Mr. Matengu from Augustinium Secondary School, and some of their best performing learners are my special guests today who accompany me to Parliament. I would like all of them to stand up, so we extend to them a warm welcome to the National Assembly, if you allow me.
Welcome to Parliament, welcome to the National Assembly. Thank you for being here. You are most welcome. It's your Parliament.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I will reflect further on my back-to-school journey later in my remarks. Honorable Speaker, fiscal and financial context of the budget. The global economy continues to show resilience in the face of significant adverse risks that prevailed since the onset of the global pandemic. In the World Economic Outlook update released in January 2024, the International Monetary Fund estimates global growth to remain steady at 3.1% in 2023 and 2024, before increasing marginally to 3.2% in 2025. Global growth remains below the historical average, weighed down by elevated interest rates to curb inflationary pressures, low productivity, as well as limited fiscal support due to high debt levels. On the commodity price front, international fuel and non-fuel commodity prices are projected to trend downwards during 2024, in line with subdued global demand. Nonetheless, significant downside risks remain, further heightened by the continued geopolitics in the Red Sea region, with risk of generating fresh adverse supply shocks to the global economic recovery. For the domestic economy, muted commodity prices present a significant risk for domestic production and export earnings, particularly for the diamond subsector. Nevertheless, on the upside, falling international commodity prices translate into reduced domestic price pressures going forward. Honorable Speakers, honorable members, on the regional front, economic activities in the sub-region are estimated to remain steady, with growth projected to gradually increase from 3.3% in 2023 to 3.8% in 2024 and 4.1% in 2025. The growth prospects for the region largely reflect easing supply constraints, resilient domestic demand, and subsiding impact of negative weather shocks. Domestic economic developments and outlook. Honorable Speaker, the domestic economic outlook has improved significantly as reflected in the last quarterly GDP statistics released by the Namibia Statistics Agency. In this regard, we estimate GDP growth at 5.6% in 2023 before moderating to 4% in 2024 and 3.9% in 2025. The strong growth is anchored by upbeat activities in the natural resource sector, including residual impact of ongoing petroleum exploration on domestic economic activities and a surge in uranium production following price increases. In addition, sentiments have also broadly improved across many other sectors of the economy, such as tourism, transport and storage, financial services, and electricity generation. Nonetheless, the strong economic activities largely reflect recovery in the traditional engines of growth, particularly the mining sector, which is highly capital intensive. As such, the projected economic recovery is not expected to address the pervasive and entrenched national challenges such as high unemployment, poverty, and income inequalities. Consequently, the agency to diversify the economy remains a key cornerstone of our fiscal and economic policy framework moving forward. This will require government to create constraints to growth and addressing existing policy coordination barriers that could facilitate a faster emergence of new engines of growth, especially in sectors with potential to create higher quality jobs. In this way, we will continue to implement the economic diversification strategy and integrate through the green industrialization agenda that not only promises to diversify Namibia's export, but can also increase the complexity of our economy. On the positive note, however, the surge in growth and the resultant improvement in public revenue has created a much-needed avenue for a stronger structural reform momentum, which could bolster productivity with positive spillover effects on the broader economy. Furthermore, government can utilize the boost in public revenues to address the acute education and health. Honorable Speaker, aligned with global developments, domestic prices moderated to an average of 5.9% in 2023, in contrast to 6.1% recorded in the previous year. Similarly, the latest data prints for January 2024 showed a continued downward trend in prices, with an annual inflation rate of 5.4%. Going forward, inflationary pressures are expected to subside over time, although the speed of moderation remains largely dependent on the performance of the exchange rate and global commodity price development, among others. The abating inflationary pressures is a welcome development for corporate and household balance sheets alike. Nonetheless, the impact of the prevailing monetary policy tightening cycle still weighs heavily on domestic consumption. As a result, we are keenly aware of the need to provide some measure of fiscal stimulus to improve household disposable income and boost consumer spending power. Consequently, the fiscal policy stance for the next medium-term expenditure framework should balance rebuilding fiscal buffers with providing the necessary fiscal stimulus to boost domestic demand. Fiscal development, Honorable Speaker. When I tabled the 2023-2024 budget, 2024 mid-year budget review in this House on the 25th of October 2023, I provided full account of the actual fiscal outcomes in respect of the previous financial year, as well as the revised estimates for 2023-2024. On the same day, I also tabled the Appropriation Amendment Bill, which provided an additional operational budget of 2.5 billion and some 2.3 billion for interest payments. This exercise subsequently shifted the global expenditure ceiling for 2023-2024 upwards to 89 billion Namibia dollar. The preliminary improving fiscal fundamentals driven by strong revenue growth, domestic economic recovery. In this context, revenue collections 10 months of the financial year. We have noted particularly strong collections in the revenue categories of corporate income tax, with a collection rate of 109.6%. Value-added tax, which recorded 89.7% collection, as well as withholding tax on services and tax on royalty, which both stood at 130% of estimated revenue over the period. In addition, a total of 2.5 billion has been collected on various tax categories through the tax amnesty program between April 2023 and January 2024. On the downside, however, dividends underperformed primarily due to significant decline in the global diamond prices over the period, which has adversely affected the financial performance of the NAMDEB group over the medium term. Given the strong year-to-date collections, and with 2 months remaining in the financial year, we have subsequently revised the revenue estimates for 2023-2024 upwards by 2.5 billion to a total of 81.1 billion Namibia dollar. Honorable Speaker, honorable members, regarding non-interest expenditure, the preliminary outturn at the end of January 2024 stood at 54.1 billion. This is equivalent to 70.7% of the revised expenditure numbers presented in the 2023-2024 mid-year budget review. In this context, On the operational budget, an execution rate of 73.6% was recorded over the period, while the implementation rate on the development budget, including expenditure commitments, stood at 64.5%. The spending rate is below historical levels for this time of the year. As a result, we do not anticipate significant expenditure overruns by the end of the financial year. On the statutory expenditure, 92% of the budget was spent by the end of January 2024. Cognizant of the potential overspending, interest payments are revised upwards marginally by 78.4 million. On the financing front, 10.4 billion, equivalent to 80.4% of the total funding requirement, was secured over the same period. Consequently, the total debt stock stood at 151.3 billion, equivalent to 61.3% of GDP. From a sustainability perspective, public debt growth has stabilized, and the debt metrics have started declining, primarily driven by strong growth in nominal GDP, which outpaced the increase in the nominal debt stock. Despite this, it remains crucial for the fiscal framework to maintain a primary budget surplus over the upcoming medium-term expenditure framework to contain the pace of debt accumulation. Overall, the budget deficit for 2023-24 is expected to improve significantly to 3.2% of GDP when compared to our initial estimates of 4.2% at midterm and in the main budget last year. Budget policy pillars. The budget I present before you today is crafted taking particular care to make the necessary provisions to programs aimed at supporting domestic demand and stimulating economic activities. At the same time, we remain keenly aware that government cannot achieve sustainable job creation without the support of private businesses, including small and medium enterprises. As such, the fiscal framework considers the requisite interventions to create a conducive operating environment to enable the private sector to expand domestic investments. As a result of the strong growth in GDP supported by improvements in tax administration measures by NAMRA, we have noted significant improvements in several revenue streams and subsequently some key fiscal indicators. Notably, we have observed much welcome stabilization in the key public debt metrics. However, a significant portion of our government debt portfolio is due for repayment over the medium-term expenditure framework. The largest among these maturities is the $750 million equivalent to 14.3 billion Namibia dollar Eurobond due on the 29th of October 2025. This is the largest single-day debt maturity in the history of our country. In this regard, we are committed to redirect part of the increase in revenues towards the sinking fund to manage the rollover risk and contain increases in future debt service obligations. This will ensure that we minimize a potentially significant future drain on resources that are desperately needed for infrastructure development, poverty reduction, and combating climate change, among others. Accordingly, the government will transmit at least 3.5 billion during the 2024-2025 and 2 billion in the 2025-2026 of SACCO receipts to the sinking fund to place us in a position to retire 2/3 of the Eurobond, which is 500 million, at maturity. Consequently, the remaining 1/3 of the bond, which is equivalent to $250 million, will be refinanced utilizing the most cost-effective instrument in the next financial year, cognizant of the prevailing high interest environment and the need to manage debt servicing costs. In this regard, consideration will also be given to the domestic markets as well as financing from development finance institutions. Furthermore, the past years of difficult economic conditions have culminated in slowed pace of public investments as evidenced in a persistently small and falling development budget. As a result, there has been a significant underinvestment in critical infrastructure. Subsequently, a key priority over the next medium-term expenditure framework is to make necessary provisions to accelerate infrastructure development and unlock lasting social and economic value for our country. In summary, Honorable Speaker, the 2024-2025 budget is built on three reinforcing policy pillars. Firstly, the budget prioritizes stimulating domestic demand through a menu of policy actions to boost household incomes and create a conducive environment for businesses to thrive and expand investments. Secondly, it accelerates investments in productive public infrastructure through an increase in the development budget to upgrade infrastructure that has become a hindrance to economic activities, as well as to expand social infrastructure to meet the needs of a growing and rapidly urbanizing populace and ensure the delivery of frontline public services. Thirdly, the fiscal framework continues the path to cultivate fiscal prudence through maintaining a primary surplus, thereby moderating the pace of debt accumulation. Further consideration has been made in the budget to ensure that Namibia is able to honor her debt obligations over the medium-term expenditure framework with relative ease and in the cost-effective manner. While pursuing the above policy objectives, Honorable Speaker, we remain cognizant of our social and everyday lived realities, including poverty levels, high unemployment, and frequent incidents of drought. Accordingly, specific provisions have been made in this budget to safeguard livelihoods and guard against excess reversals on gains made in social sectors. In this context, Honorable Speaker, in terms of Article 126, Sub-Article 1 of the Namibian Constitution, it gives me pleasure to table for favorable consideration and approval of the House the following. A, the 2024-2025 Appropriation Bill. B, 2024-2025 up to 2026-27 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework. C, Estimate of Revenue, Income and Expenditure for the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework. D, Development Programs over the MTF. And E, the Fiscal Strategy for the MTF period. Now let's come to the 2024-2025 budget, medium-term outlook and fiscal policy stance. Honorable Speaker, honorable members, as always, the key organizing principle of the national budget remains to maintain a careful balancing act in pursuing a people-centered but sustainable budgetary framework. The overall goal is to make a positive impact in the day-to-day lives of our citizenry and avoid reversals on the social and economic gains we have attained since independence. From a revenue perspective, Honorable Speaker, we have noted significant improvements. In this regard, we estimate total revenue of 90.4 billion for the next financial year, which is 2024-2025, an increase of 11.5% from the revised estimates of the previous year. The substantial boost to revenue stems from a positive adjustment in circle receipts, which is estimated at 28 billion, significantly better than our initial projections. Similarly, several domestic revenue streams have also been revised upwards. In this context, income tax on individuals is estimated to increase by 1.3 billion over the revised estimates of 2023-2024. VAT is estimated to increase by 1.7 billion, while non-mining company taxes are estimated to increase by 759.4 million over the same period. In addition to the above, the revenue estimates for 2024-2025 include expected dividends of 1.2 billion following the anticipated dissolution of the Namibia Post and Telecom Holdings Company during the next financial year. An additional 500 million is expected from the sale of the remaining 9% shares in the mobile telecommunication company MTC. Further, dividends are also expected from other public entities, notably the Bank of Namibia, Namibia Desert Diamonds, Namibia, and Namibia Port Authority, Namport. The revenue estimate also includes a 1.4 billion in a once-off legacy tax liabilities of selected public enterprises, as I will elaborate shortly. Over the medium-term expenditure framework, revenue is projected to average 5%, reaching 93.6 billion by the end of 2026-27 financial year. In the outer years, the revenue projections incorporated cautious estimates of circle receipts as well as moderate increase in domestic revenue aligned to our positive growth expectations. We project revenue as a ratio of GDP to remain strong, averaging 29.9% over the medium term. Despite accounting for anticipated downside risk and taking a conservative approach in our forecast, the revenue outlook is still clouded by uncertainties in the global and domestic economies. Nevertheless, we remain committed to maintaining fiscal sustainability and will thus approach any unanticipated revenue shortfalls in a manner that not compromise the gains on our fiscal metrics thus far. Honorable Speaker, honorable members, fellow Namibians, the strengthening domestic economic fundamentals and the resultant strong revenue performance have created an avenue for us to expand the spending envelope to accelerate service delivery, address the most pressing needs, and improve infrastructure development. In this context, I table before the House for the 2024-2025 budget of 100.1 billion Namibian dollar. This total expenditure includes 3.2 billion in development projects funded through external loans and grants, as well as 12.8 billion in interest payments. On balance, the total budget has increased by 12.4% from the revised estimates of the preceding year. Accordingly, the operational budget is estimated at 74.6 billion, representing an increase of 8.8% over the previous financial year. The increase in operational expenditure largely reflects the 5% adjustment in civil service wage bill at a cost of 1.7 billion to guard against the erosion of purchasing power. Despite significant inflationary pressures over the past several years, civil servants have exercised extraordinary patience, and we would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation for their forbearance during the difficult economic conditions. The wage bill adjustment is effective from the 1st of April 2024. The operational budget also includes a 1.4 billion in once-off legacy tax liabilities of selected public enterprises. This includes those enterprises whose funding was severely reduced due to fiscal consolidation in the previous years. The beneficiaries include the following: the University of Namibia, TransNamib, the Namibia Broadcasting Corporation, New Era Corporation, the National Fishing Corporation, and the Road Contractors Company. Accordingly, this transaction is recorded as both revenue and expenditure in our books, resulting in a neutral position from a fiscal perspective. Furthermore, this action was undertaken on the back of agreed conditions, including regular publication of audited financial statements and commitment to meet future tax liabilities henceforth. I would like to emphasize that this is an exceptional once-off exercise to clear the legacy debt of public enterprises accumulated prior to the establishment of NAMRA. This action is undertaken to enable NAMRA to apply the law to all taxpayers equally. Should any public enterprise accumulate tax liabilities going forward, Treasury is not prepared to offer any support. To close the infrastructure gap, Honorable Speaker, that continue to weigh against our growth potential, the development budget has been increased significantly by 58.1% to 12.7 billion. This is inclusive of 3.2 billion in grant and loan-funded projects to improve infrastructure through various ministries. The development budget is equivalent to 4.6% of GDP, a significant improvement from previous years. Nevertheless, we remain concerned about limited project execution capacity at most OMAs and procurement bottlenecks, which continuously translate invalidation of funds from and underspending on the development budget. Accordingly, government will continue to work on addressing these shortcomings. Lastly, we have budgeted 12.8 billion to meet debt servicing obligation in 2024-2025, equivalent to 14.2% of revenue and 4.7% of GDP. The debt servicing metrics, although stabilizing, still remain above the desired benchmark of 10% of revenue. Therefore, the fiscal framework for The fiscal framework provides for specific measures to maintain public debt on a reduction path and ensure that debt is raised in a cost-effective manner. Overall, we estimate to realize a positive primary budget balance of 1.4% of GDP during 2024-2025. Subsequently, the budget deficit is projected at 8.9 billion in nominal terms, equivalent to 3.2% of GDP for 2024-2025. In the interest of pursuing fiscal sustainability and debt stabilization, we aim to maintain a primary surplus and consequently keep the budget deficit below 4% of GDP over the medium-term expenditure framework. From a financing perspective, the government will employ a combination of domestic debt instruments and funding from multilateral organizations for ongoing infrastructure projects in the road, water, and railway sectors. As customary, the detailed borrowing plan for the issuance of domestic securities will be disseminated to market participants before the commencement of the new financial year. Reflecting on the above developments, the public debt stock is estimated at 165.8 billion or 60.1% of GDP during 2024-2025, a reduction from an estimated 62.5% of GDP at the end of the preceding year. Economic policy priorities over the medium-term expenditure framework. My apologies, Honourable Speaker. For 2024-2025, national budget contains macroeconomic policy proposals aimed at supporting economic growth through accelerating infrastructure development. The budget includes the following significant policy priorities. We have made provisions to the tune of 2.5 billion in the next financial year towards railway infrastructures, consisting mainly of 1.9 billion for the upgrading of the Kransberg or Chiwarongo railway section and the 488 million for the rehabilitation of the Sanford-Buchhausen-Brunn railway section in the south. In this context, critical sections of our national railway line are in a state of disrepair and will thus enjoy attention from a funding perspective in the next medium-term expenditure framework. In this regard, a total of 6.6 billion is earmarked for the railway network development over the MTEF. These allocations are further complemented by operational funding, a dedicated loan facility to purchase rolling stock, as well as ongoing efforts to improve governance at Transnami. We have provided a capital budget of 970 million to the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture to cater for the construction and renovation of classrooms and other school infrastructures. The allocation reflects our recognition of the urgency to close the infrastructure gap in the education sector and to reduce stark inequalities in access to social infrastructures, especially for the rural and low-income communities. Furthermore, we remain broadly attuned to the need to invest in human capital development as a catalyst for sustainable development and poverty reduction in the long term. We have seen in the video I shared earlier how these allocations make a huge difference in the day-to-day lives of our learners and the communities they come from. And we are encouraged to do more, resource permitting. To accelerate the implementation of the recently approved National Housing Policy, the 2024-2025 budget has allocated a total of 700 million to the informal settlement upgrading, massive land servicing, and other programs to improve access to housing opportunities nationwide. We hope this allocation will fast-track the provision of bulk infrastructure in various local authorities to improve access to services, especially in the informal settlements. Accordingly, additional implementation capacity will be required in this context, including closer collaboration with the private sector. In line with our commitment to improve the living standards and the quality of life of all Namibians, funding to the housing sector will remain a key priority over the medium-term expenditure framework, subject to available resource envelope. Given the energy supply shortage in the region, there is a need to fast-track the implementation of the approved domestic generation and transmission projects. to increase local generation capacity and to improve system stability in the medium term. In line with this, an allocation of 200 million for 2024-2025 and another 200 million for 2025-26 has been made to support NamPower in funding the development of the 40 megawatts Ochikoto biomass power station. The vote for water receives 2.2 billion in 2024-2025, including a 1.1 billion in loan-funded projects, a significant increase from the previous year's ceiling. The beneficiary projects include the refurbishment of the Shakati and Rundu treatment plants, as well as the development of the second Ohangwena Aquifer well field. In addition, funding has been availed for drilling boreholes, expansion of pipelines, and various rural water supply projects to improve access to water within communities, especially considering the increased drought incidences. Now let's listen very carefully. Tax policy and administration reforms. We will talk about the amnesty as well. Honorable Speaker, on the tax policy front, over the preceding MTF, we maintain a policy stance not to consider new tax policy proposals, specifically those with potential to stifle economic recovery and compromise the emerging growth prospects. Broadly, we still maintain the same view, and as such, this budget continues specific tax policy proposals aimed at providing some relief to taxpayers, with the aim to boost domestic demand and to broaden the tax base to improve revenue mobilization. Further, we have considered specific proposals to enhance the competitiveness of our tax system, to attract investments and foster private sector development. In this context, I'm happy to announce the following resolutions. As confirmed previously, the 2024-2025 budget has made provision to provide tax relief to low-income earners. In this regard, we will increase the threshold for income tax on individuals from the current 50,000 to 100,000 per year. Let's listen to this one. This action results in an injection of 646 million directly into the pockets of taxpayers. I think that deserves a big round of applause. We are all included. Effectively, all individual taxpayers will be exempted from paying tax on the first 100,000 of their income as from the 1st of March 2024.
Thank you.
In this respect, the revised tax tables will be published accordingly. Furthermore, we have made provisions in the 2 outer years of the MTF to adjust all tax brackets for inflation creep. In this regard, a total of 712.9 million per annum in direct relief to taxpayers has been provided for. As previously communicated, the non-mining company tax rate will be reduced by 2 percentage points during the medium-term expenditure framework. Accordingly, the tax rate will be reduced to 31% effective 1st of January 2024, with a further reduction to 30% taking effect January 2025. Furthermore, to improve competitiveness against regional peers and in keeping with global developments in corporate income taxes, the non-mining company tax rate will be reduced further to 28% during the 2026-2027. Nonetheless, to maintain tax neutrality, this reduction will be undertaken alongside broadening the corporate tax income base by doing the following: replacing the 3-to-1 thin capitalization ratio with a 30% limit on interest deductions, capping assessed losses carried forward at 5 years for normal companies and 10 years for companies operating the natural resources sectors, and thirdly, introducing a 10% dividend tax effective on the 1st of January 2026 to address the existing disparity in the investment arena, where dividends paid to non-resident shareholders is subject to tax. These proposed reforms on corporate income tax are expected to ensure revenue enhancement through improving corporate tax compliance and easing the administrative burden and audit burden on NAMRA. Overall, the changes are estimated to yield an additional taxes of more than 600 million per annum. To ensure that the principle of fairness and equity in taxation are fully applied in the insurance sector, we will amend the law to remove the non-resident shareholder tax exemption for foreign insurance company shareholders and provide for taxation of shareholders' activities like other businesses. This change takes effect in 2024-2025 and is projected to yield an additional revenue of 180 million per year. In conjunction with the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade, we are working to introduce a special economic zone, the SEZ, as an anchor to our ambition to curate competitive industrial zones. Participants in the SEZ will be subject to a corporate income tax rate of 20% only. The nominal reduction in terms of capital allowances will apply in the SEZ regime, while VAT will be zero-rated. In this respect, the SEZ is expected to be tabled in the National Assembly in 2024-2025 in advance to the expiration of the export processing zone regime in 2025. Honorable Sayyid, listen to this one. For 2024-25, the budget is further lifting the mandatory registration threshold for VAT from 500,000 to 1 million. Increasing the threshold will relieve approximately 23,000 SMEs from VAT administration to focus on their core activities while simultaneously freeing capacity at NAMRA to focus on large taxpayers. We also confirm, as previously announced, the introduction of the Internship Tax Incentive Program aimed at further incentivizing employers to enroll more interns by providing an additional corporate tax deduction. The total financial implication for the government is estimated at 120 million per year. The 2024-2025 budget also proposes building improvement deductions to address the issue of urban decay within inner cities and to maintain existing infrastructure while encouraging investments. In this regard, a capital depreciation allowance of 10% each year will be applicable on the cost of buildings erected, added to, extended or improved, and which are used for trade purposes. As a measure to support improving access to housing, the brackets for transfer duties and stamp duties will be adjusted for inflation. Accordingly, the exempt level will be lifted from 600,000 to 1.1 million. So in other words, properties below that will not attract stamp duties and transfer duties. Accordingly, moreover, the threshold to trigger transfer duty of 8% will be increased to 3.15 million effective the next financial year. Lastly, a super tax transfer duty on stamp duty bracket for luxury, this is for luxury only. Luxury residential property will be introduced for residential properties costing above 12 million. Let's listen to this one. In the coming financial year, together with NAMRA, we will explore introducing a VAT e-invoicing system which will integrate and interface cash registers at businesses to integrated tax administration system. This envisaged digitization initiative will, among others, improve NAMRA's ability to collect, analyze, and monitor tax data, lower administrative and compliance costs, while VAT fraud and enhancing tax enforcement. Honorable Muharukwa. NAMRA will continue with the final leg of the tax amnesty program, whereby interest and penalties will be fully written off if taxpayers settle their outstanding capital by the 30th of October 2024. I would like to emphasize, Honorable Muharukwa, and all other taxpayers, that this is a final extension of this program. It is important for all concerned taxpayers to participate before the due date, because we shall not lend a sympathetic ear to anyone afterwards. The total capital tax arrears stood at 17.3 billion at the end of January 2024. Lastly, on tax matters, in conforming with Article 21 of the Circular Agreement, the following excise duties on consumption of alcohol and tobacco took effect on the 22nd of February 2024. A 340 milliliter can of beer increases by 10 cents. A 750 milliliter bottle of wine goes up by 18 cents. A 750 milliliter bottle of spirits will increase by $3.90. A 23-gram cigar goes up by $5.47. And a pack of 20 cigarettes, the duty rises by 98 cents. Now, remember, this tax can be avoided. It's discretionary. You don't have to pay this tax. You have a choice. Just make the right choice. Appropriation Bill, Honorable Speaker. Let's go to the appropriation bill. Allow me to provide some synopsis of the main budgetary provisions across different sectors and programs for the 2024-2025 appropriation bill. Social sector, investments in the social sector remains imperative for a developing economy like Namibia, as it is crucial for cultivating the long-term productive capacity for our economy, cushioning the social strata against vulnerabilities, as well as broadly improving the living standards in our country. As such, we continuously prioritize allocations to the social sectors to improve access and quality public services while safeguarding the gains made thus far on social and human development indicators. In line with this conviction, the social sectors will absorb 50.7% of the budget, equivalent to 44.3 billion during the next financial year. This is an increase from 39.4 billion in the preceding financial year. The allocations are aimed primarily to address the following issues, in addition to sustaining ongoing operations. A total of 18.4 billion has been allocated to the basic education, arts and culture vote in 2024-2025 and 56.1 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework. The budget of the Ministry of Gender, Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare has increased by 23.2% to 8 billion for the next financial year. The budget includes 824.7 million to maintain the real value of the social safety net in the face of high inflation and given the high dependency ratio. Accordingly, the old age grant and disability grant will be increased from 1,400 to 1,600 per annum. Honorable Speaker, we fully recognize the dream of our departed President for a significant increase in the old age grant. but we cannot afford to deliver on his dream in a single financial year. Nonetheless, we will continue to work hard towards this goal with gradual increases over time as resources permit. In addition, we have made provision to increase the frequency of food distribution to marginalized communities at the cost of 170 million and 284.5 million to ensure full coverage of the orphan and vulnerable children, those that who have registered for this grant. Over the medium-term expenditure framework, the vote will absorb 24.5 billion. For the youth, the vote of sports, the younger parliamentarians, let's listen to this one. This is for the youth now, so the youth will punish you if you are not listening to this one. The vote of sports, youth and national service has increased by 45.3% to 679.4 million in the next financial year, and a total of 2.2 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework. Allocations have been made to various youth programs to support with skill development and capacity building. The allocation caters for, among others, skill development courses for out-of-school youth, 20 million, youth training through a charcoal and mushroom production program, 12 million, funding for the youth credit scheme, 10 million, financing for 121 youth enterprises across all constituencies, 9.8 million, and youth skill development through National Youth Service, 20 million. We take note of the re-energized interest in sports activities and have accordingly increased the operational budget for sport promotion programs by an additional 100 million. This includes 29.5 million for preparatory activities to enable us to host the Region 5 Youth Games in May 2025. In addition, 124 million has been provided in the development budget for, among others, upgrading the Independence Stadium, as well as various sports facilities and multi-purpose youth centers across the whole country. The higher education vote has been allocated 4.8 billion in the next financial year, 13% higher than the previous year. The additional allocation includes 200 million to NASFAF, bringing their total allocation to 2.3 billion and a total of 7.1 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework. Further, we have provided 108.3 million for a 5% increase in salaries for the UNAM staff. Over the medium-term expenditure framework, the vote will receive an estimated 14.7 billion. During the 2024-25, the vote of health and social services will receive a 10.9 billion and a sum of 34.3 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework. Within that allocation, we have availed more than 400 million in the development budget, including for commencing the earthworks at the Venduk District Hospital in Gavana. The expansion of primary health care centers and clinics countrywide and improving capacity of referral hospital services. Further consideration has been made to cater for the recruitment of medical personnel as well as acquisition of pharmaceuticals and medical equipment. As I have outlined prior, this budget makes specific provisions for infrastructure development to close infrastructure gaps and give greater impetus to our economic growth objectives. In this regard, a total of 20 billion, Honorable Venani, and some 58.9 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework, inclusive of projects funded through external loans, has been allocated to the sector of economic and infrastructure. And the ministry is responsible for this sector, for carrying out the construction of infrastructure and implementation of economic policies. Collectively, these make up 23.9% of the total budget. The allocations are distributed among various votes as follows. During 2024-25, the Board of Transport will receive a total of 5.1 billion, including 1.9 billion in project finance through external loans and grants. In addition to fast-tracking the upgrading of the railway network, this allocation also caters 1.8 billion for the completion of ongoing road construction projects. Regarding airport infrastructure, an allocation of 131 million has been made available for 2024-2025. Over the medium-term expenditure framework, the vote will receive 14.5 billion. A total of 1.9 billion in the 2024-25 has been availed to the vote of agriculture and land reform. This includes 50 million dedicated for land purchase to address the plight of generational farm workers, as well as 87 million for the improvement of animal health and marketing across the communal areas. Provisions have been made for improving food systems. Listen, provisions have been made for improving food systems, as well as the Green Scheme program, including phase 2 of the Nekatal Dam irrigation project, among others. In support of SMEs and domestic activities, or domestic economic activities, we have increased the budget for the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade by 31.7% to 365.5 million in the next financial year, a total of 1.2 billion over the MTF. In this context, funding has been allocated to the Equipment Aid Scheme, Startup Namibia, Emprotech Namibia to facilitate domestic trade activities and build domestic entrepreneurship capacity, especially for SMEs. Furthermore, we have made financial provision for increased funding to the Namibia Standard Institute and the Namibia Competition Commission, as well as an increase in the development budget for various capital projects to support entrepreneurship activities nationwide. The Ministry of Mines and Energy has increased by more than 50% to 381 million in 2024-25 and some 1.5 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework. The increased allocation is meant to improve capacity at the ministry, especially in the Petroleum Affairs Directorate, in the light of the upsurge in exploration activities in the Orange Basin. Furthermore, the development budget of the ministry has more than doubled, with 131 million availed to fast-track rural electrification and improve access to electricity countrywide. A total of 725.5 million has been availed to the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, some 19.4% higher than the preceding year. The increased allocation should allow the ministry to attend to infrastructural deficiencies, given the increased volume of tourist arrival, as well as to improve the overall marketing of Namibia as a tourism hub. The Ministry of Finance, now this is for all of us. Let's listen. The Ministry of Finance and Public Enterprises has been allocated a budget of 8.1 billion for the next financial year, including 3 billion for the Public Servant Medical Aid Scheme. This is all of us. And more than 700 million in transfers to public enterprises. A total of 212 has been budgeted for MIDCO, the Meat Corporation of Namibia, inclusive of the settlement of their contingent liabilities. This is not a good news. Meanwhile, 300 million has been provided for Trans-Namib to support their day-to-day operation, cognizant of significant infrastructure and operational challenges at Trans-Namib. 88 million has been allocated for the completion of Ludres waterfront. Furthermore, Honorable Muharukwa, we have availed 77 million to Agribank for a dedicated subsidy program to support farmers whose operations have been adversely affected by drought conditions over the past few years. Dear farmers, we have heard your cries. In addition, we have put aside funds to explore mechanisms to accelerate employment creation in the economy. For the financial year 2023-2024, a total of 881.1 million was allocated to the contingency fund, and all the funds herein are fully committed. Accordingly, we have distributed corresponding information regarding the utilization of the contingency fund during the current financial year. In addition, 250 million is provided for in the contingency fund to cater for the unforeseen emergencies in 2024-2025. Honorable Speaker, public safety, it is important. The public safety sector takes up a total share of the budget of 17.6% of the non-interest budget. For 2024-25, an amount of 15.4 billion is allocated and about 48 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework. The allocations are spread as follows. The Anti-Corruption Commission has been allocated 106 million in the next financial year, a 29.8% increase from the previous financial year. Allocation for this important sector have been increased to improve the implementation capacity, particularly in the area of combating anti-money laundering and financial crimes. Despite the recent grey listing by the Financial Action Task Force, we have made significant progress and remain committed to address the outstanding action items for us to be removed from the grey list in the shortest time possible. Over the medium-term expenditure framework, the vote will utilize 299.2 million Namibia dollar. The vote of Home Affairs, Immigration, Safety and Security received 7.4 billion in the next financial year. In this allocation, provision of 70 million has been made for the ministry to roll out electronic identification cards, EIDs, and ensure full coverage of civil registration through mass registration for national documents countrywide. The judiciary has been allocated 444.5 million in the next financial year and 1.4 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework to ensure speed delivery of services. The vote of justice receives 674.3 million, about 8.6% higher than the previous financial year, and a total of 2.2 billion over the medium-term expenditure framework. Administrative sector receives 7.8% of the budget allocations and an amount of 6.8 billion in the 2024-25 financial year to support effective governance and efficient administration of public services. In this sector, the budget of the Ministry of Urban and Rural Development has been increased by 37.6% to 2.6 billion in the next financial year. In addition to provisions for housing, this allocation includes 250 million in the next financial year, which is 2024-25, and another 174 million in the next financial year for the rollout of prepaid water and electricity meters in various local authorities as a long-term solution to rising debt with NAM Power and NAM Water. And an additional 141 million has been allocated for the transformation of Aus and Ludres local authorities to improve services due to the growing population driven by oil and gas exploration, as well as green hydrogen activities in the region. Over the medium-term expenditure framework, the vote receives a total of 7.8 billion. The budget of the Office of the Prime Minister remains steady at 1.1 billion in the next financial year. In this regard, provisions to the tune of 700 million has been made to cater for drought relief in the event the 2024 rain season disappoints. The Electoral Commission of Namibia has been allocated a total of 438 million in the coming financial year to ensure smooth and timely voter registration, as well as to undertake the presidential and National Assembly election towards the end of the year. The detailed breakdown, Honourable Speaker, of the expenditure allocations and revised ceilings for various votes are available in the appropriation bill before you. I would like to conclude, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, honourable members, the 2024-2025 budget and the medium-term expenditure framework I just outlined was crafted against the backdrop of a much more stable macroeconomic fundamentals than we have seen in a long time. The stable economic platform allowed us room to channel resources to provide for the most urgent needs in the social sectors, increase outlays in investments in infrastructure, while providing some relief to households and corporates alike. Furthermore, we have maintained a careful balance to ensure that we can meet our upcoming debt obligations as we persist with fiscal sustainability imperative. I believe this MTF maintains a theme of fiscal prudence and places our public finances on a sound and sustainable path. Nonetheless, I caution us to guard against the fiscal gains we have made over the past few years by utilizing the window of opportunities presented by the strengthening economic activities to rebuild our fiscal buffers and spend our resources sparingly. We should carefully balance between our very real, very urgent, very large spending requirements and putting something aside to leave a better country to the future generations. The learners who are here with me today from Havana High School, Agustinium Secondary School, and their peers at home are counting on us to provide for their infrastructure needs, but in a manner that does not burden them with unsustainable debt obligations. In the broader economy, Honorable Speaker, I further extend my caution that the signs of recovery we are seeing today emanate from the very capital-intensive natural resource sector. Too great a share of our youthful population remains out of work. The disparities in income distribution that are still prevalent and poverty levels still require much more work. As such, the need to cultivate a conducive environment to support economic activities and encourage the development of the nascent industries remains very urgent. In particular, we need to address policy coordination gaps and administrative bureaucracies and duplications that frustrate businesses in their day-to-day operations and thus impede job creation. I implore us all to redouble our efforts to create a better future for the Namibian child. In closing, Honorable Speaker, I wish to sincerely thank our late President, His Excellency, President Hage Geingob, for the confidence and honor he bestowed upon me to steer our public finances. I similarly would like to thank His Excellency, President Nangolo Mbumba, Vice President Honorable Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, Right Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Sarah Kondora Madira, and Deputy Prime Minister Miester John Mutora, and indeed all my cabinet colleagues and all of you honorable members of Parliament for your continued support and camaraderie in the management of our national affairs. I also want to thank my colleagues, Honorable Obed Kanjode, the Director General of the National Planning Commission, and Deputy Minister Maureen Hinda Bwende. I further extend my appreciation to the Executive Directors, Ms. Valencia Uiras and Mr. Tates Dove, and our officials at the Ministry of Finance and Public Enterprises and the National Planning Commission for their usual support in preparing the budget. I also express my gratitude to the Bank of Namibia and NAMRA for the all-round support on fiscal matters. I thank the leadership and officials in all the OMAs for their hard work and understanding our fiscal stance. Honorable Speaker, my back-to-school journey has left me with some homework. The back-to-school journey has left me with some homework. Mr. Mweti, the principal of Havana High School, asked me a thought-provoking question. He said, and I quote, "Children from the Monte Cristo Primary School next door are fed daily at school, given food. However, there is no feeding program at secondary schools without hostels, yet the children come from similar households." He asked, what is the possibility of introducing feeding programs, especially at certain secondary schools that are located in less fortunate communities, end of quote. Mr. Matengu, the principal of Agustinium, has this to say: we are grateful for the resources we have received from government to renovate part of our school. we hope to still be considered in the future, as there are still some school buildings at our school that need renovation. End of quote. My interaction with the learners and teachers at the schools I visited has inspired me to work harder to care for the Namibian child. It has further demonstrated that the Namibian state has the capacity to look after its citizens effectively when it mobilizes enough tax revenue from taxpayers. This has underscored for me that as leaders in Namibia, we should nurture and support NAMRA to collect the revenue due to the state in order for us to deploy those resources to care for the Namibian child. I want to repeat this one. This has underscored for me that as leaders in Namibia, we should nurture and support NAMRA to collect the revenue due to the state in order for us to deploy those resources to care for the Namibian child. It has underlined the need for all of us who are in leadership positions to always think about the less fortunate members of our society when we spend state resources. The experience made me to envision a future where each Namibian child is accorded an opportunity to be well educated, productive, and contributing positively to the prosperity of Namibia. Honorable Speaker, you may say, I'm a dreamer. To paraphrase the word of John Lennon. Now, for my younger colleagues, they probably don't know who John Lennon is. They need to Google because it was more probably in the 70s and the 60s. Please Google. To paraphrase the word of John Lennon, they may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I know the Namibian government is fully committed to this vision. I hope someday all of you honorable members of parliament, and indeed all Namibians, will join me in envisioning and working towards making Namibia prosperous and a better place for all of us. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping hope alive, especially with a constant reference to the Namibian child, whose future we need to care for now and into the future. Honorable Dienda, to postpone the debate.
I will postpone it until Thursday, the 7th of March, on behalf of
the Honorable Smith.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. The House stands adjourned until tomorrow, the usual time.
Welcome back. There you have it, Namibia. The budget has finally been tabled by the Minister of Finance, that is Ipumbu Shiimi. And with me is still my esteemed panelist, what stood out for you? Did the tabled budget live up to the theme of honoring the legacy of the late President Hage Geingob, that is by taking care of the youth and the vulnerable members of our society?
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, we've got to start by looking at what is this new budget talking about, $100 billion budget, very impressive in very many different ways. Of course, he said that this was going to look at key issues in terms of taxation and also in terms of addressing the needy sectors, whereby he singled out education and also he singled out health. On education, we've seen both ministries of education getting something. We've also seen Ministry of Health, especially talking about expansion and also the renovation of clinics across the country. The starting of the earthwork of the Havana District Hospital, very important. It's something that has been there over time.
That is now coupled with the expansion of health facilities countrywide.
Countrywide.
Yes.
Very good. So again, I would say he has lived on to the expectation of doing something in terms of taxation and also on the youth and also on health.
Ms. Chapwa, perhaps explain to us what is happening in the tax regime there. Maybe if you can just break it down for us.
Yes.
We've had exemptions, we've had breaks and incentives. Maybe you can just break it up for us.
Yes, as a tax practitioner, I'm very, very excited.
Right.
I'm very pleasantly excited. So, for example, with the change in the threshold for the individual tax from $50,000 Namibian to $100,000 per annum. I mean, just imagine, it was last updated in 2013. It was long overdue. So finally, we have an effective date, which is also the 1st of March 2024. So it's not going to happen later, but immediately. So it's a very good tax initiative.
Yes.
And then also with the reduction of the corporate tax to 31% in the current year, starting effective of 1st of January 2024. And just remember, he also announced that they are going to reduce it to 28% in the 2025 and 2026 financial year. So that's a big improvement. There's a whole lot that is happening in tax. The increment of the VAT thresholds from...
Just hold your thought there. Let's hear from... Honorable McHenry Venani is on standby to just give us his reaction to the budget.
Right, coming to you live right here from the Parliament of the Republic of Namibia, where the Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises has just launched the budget for 2024-2025. Joining us today right here after the launch of the budget, or after the tabling of the budget, is the leader of the official opposition, McHenry Venani, just to tell us a little bit about his views on what the budget was. Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
Very well, yourself?
Great. So let's quickly touch on what aspects stood out for you on the budget that was recently just tabled by the Minister of the Public Enterprise, Mr. Ipumbu Shiimi.
Well, I think the standout issue is the fact that the tax brackets have been increased. I've been saying, if you listen to my politics all over the years, I've been saying that all along, that we need to improve spending, trickling down effect of the economy by spending more money in the economy. So by lifting the tax bracket from 50,000 to 100,000, it will help the economy. I would have loved to see a situation where we have 3 billion being spent in the economy as opposed to 670 or some 1.6 billion on the tax brackets. But it's a good thing. It's a good start that we are spending more money on the economy. There is a number of resources being thrown to various key ministries, which is a good thing in terms of increased expenditure. But if you look at the construction industry and the procurement budget that has gone up by 8 billion, and that construction industry is reeling it on its knees. Who gets the tenders? It centers down on the mechanics. 146-kilometer road that goes to the airport a tender has been given to Chinese. That we would have given to Namibians, each company getting 2.4 kilometers. You would have had 10 companies that would have worked on that 100 million and spend that money, that 100 million in the country. That 100 million that we're spending on the road to the airport is being, materials comes from China, labor comes from China. All we are going to be left with is a loan of 100 million plus a road. The rest of the money will not be spent in the economy. So I think when you have an increased capital budget, you also need some necessary reforms to make sure that small and medium enterprises are going to enter the market for our people to be able to have the necessary jobs and to stimulate the engines of growth which is job creation. So it's very loose to say we are increasing to 8 billion capital projects, but you are not having a comprehensive strategy on how you want that money to be given to companies and how many companies are going to, because we don't want to see someone getting a tender $1 billion as opposed to having 100 companies, each one getting $20 million. That will be able to give that company the necessary stimulus for the economy to be able to drive around. So it's not a game of creating 1 billionaire, it's a game of creating 100 millionaires, and that needs to be understood. On the question of housing, government has expended a number of resources to housing, but there is no clear plan on how we want to achieve housing. We have a backlog of close to 700,000 houses as we are speaking. You are not giving subsidization to municipalities. Giving more money to a problem doesn't answer the problem. There must be a strategic approach. I would have given money right away now to plots so that people can be able to access servicing more plots for more people to have access to plots. If you give more plots to people, people can be able to build homes. If you are throwing the money at housing itself, trying to build the infrastructure,
all right.
let me just have journalists, you have a way of trying to navigate debate. Let the politicians do the politics. I'm telling you, the metrics of housing will not be addressed by building more houses. Deliver flats, deliver homes, deliver social housing, deliver events, subsidize municipalities so that more and more people can have homes. You are working at NBC, you don't have a house, you can't afford a house. But if you are given an event, you would be able to build your own house and go to the bank. So those are the matters that are not addressed. On job creation, there has been an attempt to start saying we would create a stimulus plan for SMEs. Yesterday we were talking about it. But the young graduates, how are they going to find the jobs? You need to tie up, there is no clear job plans. How do we create the jobs in the country? Government has no plan to create the jobs. Jobs can only be created by a robust agricultural sector. You need to spend money in the agricultural sector. If you look at the increase of the budget of agriculture, we are spending less than 2.7% of our GDP on agriculture. It is failing job creation. The biggest problem in this country is job creation. And if you do not create jobs and stimulate the agricultural sector by mechanization, by value additions, by drip irrigation, by massive water desalination plants, we are not going to grow the economy. So there is a lot of money on the budget, which is a positive thing, but the mechanics of implementing a stimulus that would stimulate the economy is not yet there.
All right, that is the leader of the official opposition, McHenry Vanane, coming through. We have got the leader of NUDO coming through right here. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
How is everything?
No, everything is fine.
All right, let's talk about the budget that the minister just tabled in the National Assembly, in the Parliament just right now. What are your overall thoughts on the budget that was just tabled, and what focusing areas or key areas stood out for you?
Thank you very much. I think it's a good one. My expectation was that there will be expansion, especially in the social sector, and that is exactly what happened also. And I'm a bit, he also touched on the issue of youth unemployment, because that is one of the hot potato at the moment. And what is not so good for me is the amount given to the Ministry of Agriculture. Because for me, agriculture is also one of the most important ministries. We need to invest more in the green schemes for people to be able to produce locally, so that we can also in that way improve livelihoods of people. So 1 billion, I think what they got is for me is not enough. But overall, I'm happy, especially on the portion of the Ministry of Health and Social Services. It is bringing us closer, if not already closer, to the Abuja Declaration that 15% of the national budget should be allocated to ministries of health and social services, and that is to allow us also to improve on our infrastructures, especially now that we envisage to build the Windhoek District Hospital.
All right. You also serve as the Deputy Minister of Health, and seeing as Ministry of Health is one of the ministries that got the largest chunk throughout the years, and also in this tabling of the budget, a largest chunk of the budget, of the funds rather, is there any sort of return in terms of service delivery that comes from the money that has been allocated from the ministry in itself?
Yes, of course, because especially since the time of COVID-19, a lot have been happening in the ministry in terms of infrastructure, in terms of human resources, in terms of medical equipment. So today, most of our biggest hospitals have oxygen generating systems that we did not have. So I'm very much happy. Yeah.
Right. It's just looking at it, what would you say should have been also added on? You mentioned earlier that the added area or the agriculture sector has gotten very little off from the budget, depending on what type of development it can potentially bring. What other sector would you say should have gotten enough, or did get more than what they deserve, or what could have come from it?
Okay. One would never say what is enough. Because even in health, you will never say it's enough, because the social needs are always also not static. They keep on changing. And so you will always have a need. Even if you develop, there is always a need. And I'm looking at the Ministry of Gender, for example. The expectation was that we will honor the dream of our late president of increasing the old age pension from 1,400 to 2,000 or 3,000. Yeah, it's not the case. It's not possible. It's not feasible at the moment, but at least there is an increment in that area. So that is also something that we need to appreciate.
All right, thank you very much. That was Esther Mwinyangwe joining us, who also serves as the Deputy Minister of Health and Social Services, but also as the leader of the Nudo Namibian Unity Democratic Party. Right, on that note, we are also joined by the Deputy Leader of the Landless People's Movement, Henny Sebeb. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. We had a nice budget speech by the Minister, but of course there are a few concerns. He did not elaborate so much well when it comes to energy production in the country. He talked about a 40 megawatt station that they are planning to build, but I think it's not sufficient for our energy needs. I thought he would be focusing also more on the energy mix in the country, solar, green hydrogen, and the other part. The most important part is that he kind of did not elaborate more on it. The other concerning issue for me is a little bit of a grant, social grant that was given to the pensioners, $200 Namibian dollars. I thought he would maybe put it on 2.5. The other part is in terms of the youth programs, the capacitating of the youth, the skilling and so on. I think it was quite satisfactory there, looking at the number of the unemployed youth in our country. I think the injection of more money, even if it is 50 million there, 20 million there, I think it was quite all right. And for that one, I'm quite happy. The only issue that I'm a bit worried about is the infrastructure development, much more the railway development. Who are the entities that are going to be identified in terms of procurement and so on? Is it going to be again the Chinese companies and the money will leave the country, or are we going to divide it amongst the local expertise that we have? That's a bit of a worry for me. So much money, but yet the plan has not been elaborated, how we are going to ensure that our SMEs are going to benefit from such infrastructure development. The social housing program part is quite all right. The amount, however, 700 million is for me too less, too few. I was looking at perhaps even 2 to 5 billion that we could inject. especially in terms of the bulk municipal servicing. Servicing the land is a big issue in this country. You know, our terrain, it's rocky and so on. So I thought 700 million was a bit less. Maybe if it was from 2 to 3 to 5 billion, it will have quite served us very well, so that we could start to eliminate the growing number of the tyranny of the informal settlements in this country.
All right, just in short, what else would you say, or what sector would you say has gotten more, and could that money could have been allocated better to another sector? Just in short, because my producer has said that I'm pressed with time.
No, I think it was a good balancing act for me, but I thought from elsewhere more could have been given to energy development, because energy, the way ESCOM is struggling with load shedding and so on, I thought if we could spend more time on energy development, solar energy development much more, we would have done much more better. And we must also look into the issue of the water and electricity debts write-off. Not only the write-off for businesses, the tax relief that you are giving, but water and electricity debt write-off, much more for the indigent people and so on, will have been working for me much more better. But there is always a next time, as they say.
We're going to cross back to Daniel Nadunya, where he will give us an in-depth analysis on the focus areas for the bill that was just tabled by the Minister of Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises. My name is Donald Karizep. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and we are back with the analysis of the budget. I mean, before the interventions from members of Parliament right there, we were busy discussing about the changes or the development in the tax regime as announced by the Minister. Please, let's continue with that conversation.
Yes, as I was saying, I'm very excited. So with the introduction of increasing the VAT threshold, the compulsory registration, from 500,000 to 1 million. So if you can just think about the impact that it would have to SMEs that will not be obliged to register for VAT, it's going to be a huge tax relief to these entities. And there's also an introduction of 10% dividend tax, withholding tax and dividend tax. So I'm quite sure the shareholders will not be happy with this, because I mean they were exempted from withholding tax prior to this announcement. So a whole lot is happening. And at the same time, there's also a reduction into how long an entity can actually carry forward assessed loss, which was previously 10 years, and now it's been reduced to 5 years. So partly is also to combat on, for example, for now, as you can see, the minister made tax proposals that reduce taxes, but they also now needs to protect the government in terms to say, okay, we are giving this to the taxpayers, what are we getting from it? So the reduction of how long you can actually carry on assessed loss, I think also balance that out to an extent.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is the effect of the changes that were made with regard to tax? What is its effect on the end user? Let's maybe make an example of an employee who is maybe earning about 500,000 per annum. What does this mean?
Yes, what this means is that initially we would tax people that were earning from about 50,000 and above, that started at the rate of 18%. So now that we are starting from 100, and what I've seen is that it will go from 100 to 150 at 18, then we go from 150 to 300. So you will realize that there will be, if you are earning 500,000, you'll probably now fall back at a rate of 28%. That could be a 50,000 saving. It's not really much, but at least you've got some money in the pocket that you can use for buying other things. Looking at SMEs that are now saved from the compulsory registration of VAT, the figure is about 23,000 SMEs that are now told, no, if you're not going to have an income of 100 of a million, then you are not supposed to register VAT compulsorily. So that saves them. They will now have some money to do something with. Of course, we may not be very happy with these changes. We see they are small, but the minister made a very bold statement. We are not able to implement everything in one financial year. And that said, therefore, what we need to expect going forward is that could there be more tax reliefs coming in the coming years? Definitely yes, from what I read in this statement.
Yes. Now, perhaps apart from what stood out and which ministry got the biggest chunk and so forth, perhaps let's talk about capital expenditure versus operational budget. Maybe let's look at that. Can we say the budget that was tabled does support economic growth at its most? I mean, there have been concerns of how much is allocated to the Ministry of Agriculture, for example, energy and so forth. Maybe what's your take on that?
Yes, the Ministry of Agriculture will become the catalyst of the economic growth in Namibia. Remember, we are saying if we are able to import less, and then we could also now even be exporters, it would be good for the country. Why am I saying so? Imagine somebody who has imported potatoes from South Africa will charge you more than someone who's growing that potato locally here when it's in the shell. So those are the things that we should be talking about. However, I now expect the ministries, especially the Ministry of Agriculture, what do? Can we spread whatever we have within the 14 regions of the country? Can we get developments going so that you don't have to be walking long distance of moving from one region or another to look for, let's say, a good? Can we start doing small kind of production within the 14 regions? That would be my take. Again, the competition, we don't want to be growing things and then they get rotten in our homes. We should find a market for them. The market is already here. It's just that we need to balance with our the already big companies like the Pick and Pays, the Spar. How do we balance what they put on the shelves versus what we locally produce, such that our people can also get value for their money?
Yes. I mean, our conversation earlier before the budget was tabled, we spoke about the pension or disability grant and pension grant. Basically, you said you were not really expecting that the amount will be doubled. We've now heard and seen that the old age grant has now been increased with 200 Namibian dollar. That is from 1.4 to 1.6.
Yeah.
What's your take?
I mean, that's a positive increase. If you look back to previous years, it has mostly been increased with $50 or 100 Namibian dollars. And to increase with 200 Namibian dollars at a time is a positive increase. Maybe not what the nation was expecting, but I expect it to gradually increase over the years and eventually catch up to that amount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe anything noteworthy that we also picked up from this budget that we just need to talk about?
Two things. We spoke about the youth, and now we've seen their schemes to help the youth. Upskilling, capacity development, very positive move. Initially, I was talking about the disconnect between the theory that students learn in class and the practical that they do in the industry. Now there's that internship incentive. The conversation that needs to start going on now must be between the institutions of higher learning and the industry players, such that there is now an incentive for you. We now need to get these students who have learned some theory into the industry to be skilled, such that by the time they graduate, they're ready for the market, and then we will have a reduction in our rate of unemployment, especially among the youth. Of course, we were talking about this is the year of election. We've now seen the budget has gone up by probably approximately 15 billion into 100. So it means that there is more money that will be in the circulation. What does that mean? When there's more money in circulation, it means that me and you, we now have the capacity to afford A, B, and C that we were struggling to get. However, we need to caution that having the money in circulation also could lead to things like impulse buying. People now just spending unnecessarily thinking there is money flowing. No, we should still be prudent in how we spend money, because that is very important for the long-term effect of the little money that is coming into our pocket.
Is there perhaps an area that you feel was not well catered for? Is there anything that you expected to basically be provided in this budget and it just basically did not meet your expectations?
Well, I expected an announcement on tax policies on the renewable energy sector, and the minister did not make any announcement. And this is a hot topic currently in Namibia. It's an upcoming booming sector that is very active. So I expected to have some proposals towards this industry, to have tax incentives that they are looking through or investigating, or because we need to encourage investments in Namibia. We need to encourage this exploration activities, for example, oil and gas, but also to encourage this hydro energy sector. For it to take off, we need to have tax policies that promote foreign investments and maybe also local investment. You never know.
One other thing is the budget as it stands is a policy stance of the government, but the implementation is one thing, and we've seen that there are dates of implementation for some aspects and no dates of implementation on other aspects. Perhaps maybe your take on that, and what do you think should happen going forward?
I mean, it's very good to have good policies, but they need to be implemented, I think, way faster than the way they are currently being implemented. So, for example, some of these tax policies will be announced, but it will take maybe a year or two before they're actually implemented and effective. So it would be ideal or positive if they could be implemented earlier, or we could actually have effective dates for most of the proposals that were made by the minister, to just provide clarity and also to make sure that the Namibian population benefit from these proposals, or proposals earlier than later.
Yes.
From my side, what needs to happen is the speed at which this money now needs to be disbursed to reach the end user. And secondly, like we are saying, a policy is one thing on paper, implementation is another thing. On top of implementation, there should also be monitoring and evaluation. The key areas where we lack is in monitoring. So we get money, start a project, we wait and wake up after a year to go and say, oh, where are we now? And we find that the construction did not even take place, but money was paid. The other area that I'm a little bit disappointed in, and the leader of the opposition pointed it out, infrastructure development in the country is one of the key areas, and it's where a lot of money is allocated to. But we've seen consistently that the local contractors complain that the playing field is not leveled for them to compete. So could there be policies or some ways in which we could get a combination of both international and local companies working together? So something like that should be put in place. Currently, it's not there, and therefore it becomes on, we look at the expertise, the capacity, and your past experience, which many of our local companies do not have. But if we have a way in which we can mix the two, then even our local companies will gain expertise in working with foreign and international companies in helping us to build the infrastructure.
Yes. Perhaps if I can ask one final question, what do you make of the amount allocated to the Anti-Corruption Commission, which is just below $1 billion?
Well, it's difficult. If you would ask even the Minister of Finance himself, he would tell you it's difficult. It's very difficult to balance these allocations. And therefore, you keep on just wondering, who do I give? Do I rob Peter and give Paul? Whoever is allocated anything would not be satisfied. My take in this is anti-corruption. Please make good use of what you have. Let people see the fruits of what you're doing. In fact, even if you allocate more and still nothing is being seen, people would be like, okay, why then do we need to allocate more? So first of all, the probably need to show us what they can do with the little that has been allocated to them before we can start thinking of increasing the allocation.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, and as we wrap up, perhaps your final remarks, 30 seconds, please.
Final remarks. Oh, okay. It was a pleasant budget. I think it's a very positive outlook. If you see the capital expenditure is increased, the revenue budget also increased. Everything technically, I want to say increased. And if you look at the deficit as well, also reduced. We're expected to reduce to 3.2 to GDP. That's a very good outlook. So I would say positive outlook, positive budget. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Mr. Odada, 30 seconds.
Nothing much to say. I think the Honorable Minister has done what he could have done. We're still in a very difficult situation. We're just trying to see the new growth into the country. But like she has said, positive budget, we now need to see positive implementation.
Ms. Shapra and Mr. Odada, thank you so much for devoting time out of your busy schedule to come and basically share your expertise and analysis with members of our public and our viewers out there. Thank you so much. Well, Namibia, this has been a live broadcast of the NBC from the Parliament, where we basically witnessed the tabling of the national budget for the year 2024-2025 by the Minister of Finance, that is Ipumbu Shiimi. From myself, Daniel Nadunya, and the rest of the crew, goodbye for now.